So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Finance and Governance Committee. Have we got any apologies?
Councillor Jane Besant.
Thank you. Has anybody got any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda?
Yes, I have. It's item number 3 in the Finance and Government Committee report. It's referring to Crewe Heritage Centre.
Okay, thank you for that. Has anybody else got any others? Thank you. So number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the Finance and Governance Committee held 12th of September. Has anybody got any questions regarding the minutes in terms of accuracy?
Proposing changes.
Councillor Hogben is proposing. Councillor Murray is seconding. All those in favour? All those in favour? Well, that's 5. Any abstentions? That's people who were here. Thank you. That's 3 abstentions. And I assume there's no against. Well, we add up to 8. Next item is public participation. I can't see any members of the public. Have we had any questions submitted? Thank you. So we're moving on to item number 5, which is to review the year-to-date financial position through Town Council. Do you want to start us off, please?
Yeah, the report's there amongst it. It shows spend to profile. There are no risks or issues, and a little bit of the Operations Improvement Committee's budget associated with public realm is underspent at this time. But other than that, we're not facing any significant challenges. We're working our way through the earmark reserves, which is what they're there for, to identify committed spend.
Thank you. So, how much of the operations and improvements is underspent?
With regards to the public realm, it's almost the entire budget. It's got £24,000 out of £25,000. And with regard to the town centre excuse me, just lost it for a second here. Oh yeah, sorry. With regard to regeneration projects, it's around £12,000 underspent.
But we expect that to be spent by the end of the year.
There is work going on right now to identify opportunities to spend all that yet.
Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Hogben?
Yeah, probably probably need a reminder. This is on page 7. It's the parks and allotments. And it states that it mentions this £30,000 from an earmarked reserve that has been used. What was that? Can you remind us what that was for?
The commitment to spend last year's budget was
Yes.
made and the project moved forward, but because it wasn't delivered fully last year, it was last year's budget was put into an earmark reserve and has now been paid out as it happens because the last bill arrived.
What was it? You said it was
That's for Frank Webb Avenue Park.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Okay.
I assume that some of these we're waiting a second bill, like the floral schemes.
Yep, that's actually just landed as well. Okay, right.
So we expect most of the budget to be spent by the end of the
Yeah,
year.
it's spending pretty much the profile apart from a couple of those underspends.
Right, so we're just noting that, aren't we?
Yep.
So is everybody happy to note the financial situation? Yeah. Number 6 is to consider and approve the payments for the date recommendation to Council 1st of the 9th 2023 to the 31st of the 10th 2023 to the value of £123, £487.31p. Has anybody got any questions about those payments? we've been receiving. Yeah, we do receive about monthly, don't we, day book that
Twice a month.
councils.
So the way it works is we can't pay any money out at all without authorisation from chairs of the committees. And so twice a month is issued what's called a day book, which is a list of invoices for falling due, and that's sent to the chairs of the committees, and they scrutinise a selection and take a random selection or all if they want of those there and cross-check everything balances and matches, and therefore give authorisation to pay once that's been scrutinised. And then it comes for a second coat looking at, and council just to our oversight.
Could I be nosy then?
Yes, Councillor Hogben.
Yes. I'll pick out the biggest then. Let's see, on page 12. Yeah, 23rd of October. That's the biggest single item, I think. It's £36,176 paid to be paid to Cheshire East Council.
CCTV.
That's it.
Was it?
Very interesting.
No, I don't think so, do you?
Is that it? Has anybody else got any other questions?
Of course, we'll ask for the second biggest then.
Go on.
I think I can guess what it is. Answer.
30,000. 36.
That was the first, or one of the aspects associated with Frank Webb Avenue. So initial works of Frank Webb Avenue. It comes in more than one tranche of invoice.
Does that 30,000 marry up with the previous 30,000? Is it brought forward?
Well, it would be part of that earmark reserve, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
And that earmark reserve is now spent because that's the last range of day book had the last invoice on that associated with delivery.
So that is particular, yeah, that's specific to that particular project.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
So for example, the £36,000 one, which is, and it's logged up under the reference 1.17E plus 10.
Yeah.
Do all invoices come under that for Cheshire East and Ansett? Because
No.
it reads the same to me.
It does read the same.
Separate in the sense of. So how does that
Well,
get differentiated at Cheshire East then?
It's differentiated Cheshire East because that's the report's reference that is slightly different. So Cheshire East invoices and Ansett invoices, because it all comes from the same point really, are number sequentially, and they're at now, I'm going to guess, please don't hold me this, they all start 117004 and then another 4 numbers, because that's how many invoices they've issued, which includes for various services they provide around the borough over all the time. So that is just pointing out there's 10 more digits after 117, and that there actually are different digits because they're different invoices. But the report hasn't given that column width to there. But
Well, you
when
have
you get
that in your
well, you have in your day book actually lists that.
Yeah. That's it.
It lists the different ones, and I imagine when you check the next day, you'll look and you'll see it's 117004 for something or other, and one day it'll go 045.
Okay. I shall check that one.
Councillor Mortimer?
What's the 4,694 Paradise one? What's that for?
Those are for the street entertainers during half-term holiday. We went round entertaining the town centre and we were very well received. So there's a selection during the week, and that's the provider.
Okay.
It's a fun name to have on a council spreadsheet, that isn't it? Fool's Paradise.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
There you go.
Right, so people have had a chance to look and ask questions. Is anybody willing to propose approval of these payments? Councillor Clark, Councillor Rhodes is seconding. All those in favour? Thank you, that looks unanimous. And then we move on to item 7, which is something that throws us all these policies that we are reviewing as part of our annual review of policies that the council has. I intend to take them all together unless there's anybody got any particular questions on any one. There is bring your own device policy for use if staff wish to use their own device within the building and within the IT system of the council. Child protection and vulnerable persons safeguarding policy. Customer care policy and complaints code. Crew friendship and twinning policy, and the general privacy notice. Do you want to say anything on these, Pete?
Well, as per the last meeting, they are all track changes, mostly not changed a huge amount, but they have all been reviewed. The first one, I think, the first two have had the most changes, but they're all track changes and none of any significant note that I can recall, because I did it a while ago.
Councillor Clark, have you got a question?
Yeah, it's just under risk and liabilities.
Could you give me a page, sorry?
So, 14, I think. 2.
Quite it.
So, officers have been removed.
Because we don't bring our own devices.
Right,
The
okay.
policy was written before officers were given mobile phones, because we don't have a phone system anymore. It all goes to the central line and straight out to mobile phones, so there are no desk phones anymore. So there's no purpose for an officer to use their own device for council work. That is in our risk register elsewhere. That reduces the risk of data transference.
Councillor Hogben?
That last one, risk and that then, crew temporary to take appropriate disciplinary action, what to include in termination of employment for officers.
So that relates to if I were to take your personal details out on my personal phone,
Right,
and then share them around, that would be
okay.
could be considered gross. I'm not trying to set myself up here. Gross misconduct, because under the employee, well, yes, under data protection, but also under the employment handbook. I'm under the employment handbook. This is council code. I'm not allowed to use council data or assets for personal use.
That answer your questions, Councillor Clark?
It does, thank you.
Councillor Hogben?
I think it's a very obvious question to ask. First I've seen this, I didn't know I needed permission to use my laptop or any other device. So as far as that goes, it does actually say somewhere that Crewe Town councillors must agree to the terms and conditions set forth in this bring your own device policy. So may I suggest that that is the case, and it's a change. That looks like it's a fresh.
What page are you on, please, Councillor Hogben?
Page 13 on the Sun. Almost by definition, councils will be using their own devices, unless of course the town council decides that it wants to invest in providing them. Just suggest that then is drawn to the attention of all members and actually acted upon, because I don't recall agreeing to any such policy unless I've missed it.
Well, I don't think this policy will have been to councils in the time you have been Councillor Hogben, because we're on the annual review.
I see.
So we're on page 13. Can you read the bit
Needs
out
to be
again?
part of the induction then.
Yeah, it needs to be part. That's all I'm saying. It's there. Fourth paragraph. Crewe Town councillors must agree to the terms and conditions set forth in this bring your own device policy in order to be able to connect their devices to the company network.
Yeah, I'm on the Wi-Fi now.
So that would be if you want to connect to the office Wi-Fi.
I see.
So if you're using your own device at home, you're fine.
I see.
It's only if you want to
It's like
use
now
your
I'm-
device during a meeting and
I
watch
see.
it.
Yeah, which I see. And some people have done, and some people haven't. that makes that clear. So I did wonder about this company network business. I thought, well, I've got a company network myself.
So do we want to put council network there then? Councillor Mortimer.
I just want to clarify, following on from Steve, just to clarify that. So, if I use my phone and I use the Wi-Fi here, what am I not supposed to do? Just clarify that for me,
He will
please.
explain to you.
Yeah.
Under the Data Protection Act, which was formerly known as GDPR, because that was the European regulation, and now we adopted it through the Data Protection Act.
Yeah.
The sharing of private information and personal information is prohibited unless you have exact permissions. So, to achieve that, every organisation must have a policies to make sure that they adhere to it. And in our setting, at parish level, it is common practice that people will use their own devices, hence a bring your own device policy. To do that, to ensure that we can demonstrate that we are following the DPA, Data Protection Act, we have a policy in place that members have to put their hands in the air to adopt, because that's how council works. I have no power of delegation to adopt this without you.
Yeah.
And that demonstrates, should there be a data protection breach, we had in place due process. That's what this is all about. The associated aspect of access to the council's Wi-Fi is, again, it's a permissive approach, and therefore you've got to accept there are responsibilities on those users not to misuse it.
Would it be best to mention the word Wi-Fi in this permission?
If you want to, it's your policy. It makes it clear. It's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine by me.
I read it. I've read it this week, and I didn't notice anything untoward, other than it saying that we need permission to use our own devices within these four walls.
Yeah, but equally it does mean that you do have access to council information that you have to be sensitive to, that is also on your own personal device, and therefore not to be shared as if it were your personal information that you can share around. That's also part of it. It's a responsibility of us all not to share private or personal information. And that's not an option. We've all got to do it within the law, whether we're councillors, officers, or members of the public. We can't share.
Councillor Mortimer, you want to come back?
Yeah, just so basically, it's not the case of just the Wi-Fi logging in, it's just confirming that we bring our own devices, but with that comes the responsibility of not to share the data under the Data Protection Act 2018.
Yeah,
I'm
personal
aware
data.
of that, personal data, yeah.
The vast majority of our information is already on our website,
Yeah,
so the vast majority of what we do is network. It's personal data.
Personal data.
And so we have to have something in place that demonstrates we've acknowledged
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's what this is. I'm happy to change any word you want and change it to council Wi-Fi network. That's absolutely fine by me, and the rest of it relates to data security and making sure you've got secure devices.
Right, fine, yeah.
Councillor Hogben?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, so that clarifies that the company network, that means basically being in this office and getting the code. I mean, I'd have to say, last time I was here, a previous occasion, fairly recently when I was here, I was following something. I got the Wi-Fi, but I didn't have the code, so I finished up, I'll probably have to pay for it, or it used up some of my data. I realised that later, but so you don't need the code anyway, although it means if you are granted the code to use here, is that the Wi-Fi code, then you get it for anybody, presumably for anybody in the public sector, in the public.
Yeah, if we share openly the Wi-Fi password,
Yeah, okay.
which we don't.
That's it. And then the very first sort of sentence says we're granted we're permitted to use these devices for council business, and that's a general thing. I'm grateful that's been clarified, because I mean, I can use it. The main purpose is, of course, having the access to the emails and things that arise from that, which has to be arranged. It'd be quite. I think it's what's been made. It should be made clear that it's an induction stage. So just something to add, because DPA, GDPR, whatever else.
More than happy to add.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Has anybody got any comments on any other policies?
Yeah.
Councillor Rose.
Yeah, now we're being educated on the intricacies of this actual policy. Could you just explain to me, who's not tech savvy at all, what I've looted in brackets Android or jailbroken in brackets iOS devices are strictly forbidden from accessing the network? Could somebody please explain to me?
She will explain to you on the way home.
Yeah.
There are mobile devices. iOS, I believe, is Apple, and Android is everything else, as I understand it. And those are the background formats, what they're called, operating systems to those mobile devices. We use Samsung phones in the council because they're pretty cheap, and they're on Android. And you can go out. I believe, and now I'll be honest. This is the extent of my knowledge, and I'm probably pushing that a bit as well. You can go to one of our smaller technology shops, I imagine, and ask them to unlock a phone in a more brutal way than they are designed to be, technologically speaking, with some program, I'm guessing, and that allows that device to be more accessible and accessed. Excuse me, and used for other things, I'm sure. What and how, I have no idea. This is just trying to say only proper, well looked after and well supported devices are supposed to be used so that they aren't easily hacked, I imagine.
We'll sleep a lot better.
It's very easy for me to say, I've got a phone here that you can use and you can have it for a tenner. It's been asked and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, I imagine that's what's coming up. Exactly how they're used, you'll be happy to know. I have no idea because it's not something I'm involved
Well,
with.
thank you for sharing that.
It's ISO, it's Apple that's always locked, and Samsung's, their phones are never locked anymore. They're open to, you put any SIM card in a Samsung phone. Apple, you can only put in what that particular phone says, SIM card says you can have.
Right. Thank you for that. Have we got any other questions on any other policies? No?
No.
So, can we take the vote for these on block? So, are we willing to approve the policies with those minor amendments? Is anybody willing to propose that?
I'll move.
So, Councillor Strain Francis, anybody willing to second? Councillor Clark, all those in favour? That looks unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody.
I'm glad you didn't ask me to explain what I was proposing.
Right, item 8 is to note the UK SPF grant update. I think Pete will probably start off by explain what UK SPF means.
Yeah, it's the UK, that stands for United Kingdom, I've learned that myself. Shared Prosperity Fund, it's a central government fund which is then shared towards local authorities, tier above us, so Cheshire East, to administer. And they had, if you recall at the last meeting, a call out for expressions of interest. We submitted 3 applications to this fund, 2 of which were successful, and they have been awarded funds technically, although we're waiting for Cheshire East to issue the offers, but we're advised that's a technicality rather than an issue. So that's where we're at. The Cheshire East had all the funds and they've gone through this process. They've issued their proposals for submitting, for providing this funding to those applications submitted across the borough. Crewe Town Council has been awarded some of that money, £135,000 from that fund, and that's associated with Arts Development and Arts Trail project, which is fully funded, and feasibility works for generating a large-scale application for funding for capital investment in the Heritage Centre, which we're helping them through. Those are now in the process to be delivered, and so you have here a report detail on that. It also gives a bit of background on how the full UK SPF allocation of this call out was dished out by Cheshire East. And so what we're now looking for is, you've approved that we can accept the grant last time, now we need to approve, because that we had to be able to accept it first before we do it, now you're asked to say, can we spend it as per the application?
Can I say well done to whoever filled in the grant form, because me and Kate at Motherwell looked at it and then decided, no, we can't do this. It was so onerous, that application form, so yeah, well done.
It felt deliberately difficult
Yeah.
to reduce applications, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So,
It was difficult. I did all three. It was very detailed, and then there were subsequent 2 more rounds of questions and detailed forms to do for each one, just to clarify bits. So we got to the end of it, which is very positive, and that's it's grant money, so it's only worthwhile doing in the end. But it's really hard for third sector groups to do, because obviously you have employed officers meet to give time and attention to it, whereas third sector you're also running the rest of your lives and maybe jobs as well around all that.
yeah, we had 10 days to look at it. And
It was a very short time.
7 days of that, me and Kate were on holiday, so, so we decided, looked at it and said, no, we'll have to.
Yes, it was quite difficult, and you're right, it was a very short window of opportunity.
Yeah, we were looking for funding for ADA, but, which, ticked the boxes, but, the form was just, so well done.
Yeah,
I
I second
bel-
that.
Yeah, I think that there was some money unallocated, wasn't there?
Yeah,
But it was unclear whether they would go for another round of applications or whether they would just divide it between the various.
I think they're not keen on putting another round of applications out, because it's got a lot of work to just review as well, and I think they'll find opportunities in the projects for where there's or just added value, I think is the phrase that's used. But having said that, we've just submitted a little bit of an application for some town centre enhancements, not massive, £40,000, but it's not nothing either. So to see if we can suck up some of that leftover funds that they've got there. No guarantees on that, but we'll see how we go.
So there might be an opportunity then for other groups who've got the time to fill in the form to actually apply, because I know there was some funding left over. I mean, significantly for me, a lot of the money went on projects that are Cheshire East.
Yeah,
Projects.
Steele's got nearly 2 mil, haven't they, so yeah, so well done.
I mean, Crew got something like, what was it, how many, 100, they got some
Crew
sort of
got-
100,000
yeah.
for the Mill Street.
700,000.
Yeah.
The total available funds was £4,755,000 and a bit. Cheshire East awarded their own projects £3,857,000, 81% of the money. Crew projects, of which 135 was us, were 952,000, 20% of the fund. £700,000 that was awarded to the ongoing Cheshire East Mill Street Corridor project, and Macclesfield projects were awarded 1.8 million, the majority of that going to Crewe Market Hall, Macclesfield Indoor Market, forgive me, and so Macclesfield got 40% of the allocation.
They're jealous of our market.
Well, they'll never,
Quite nice to
they'll never
see.
turn that indoor market into our market.
No, they won't, no.
They'll try. I'm sure they'll try to do something very meaningful with it.
I'm sure they will.
I'll be talking about different funds in this, because when I went to school, 100% was all of it. And when you look at that, it comes out 140%.
Oh, well, different stats there, I'm afraid. There are lies or damn lies, and then there are statistics.
Okay, well,
They've allocated about 96% of all the money in total. Some of it has gone to rural areas and that sort of thing. But what the 2 different sets of stats are, 80% of the money went to Cheshire East projects.
Yeah.
So 20% went to others,
Yeah.
of which we're some of them. And if you go on then locality-wise, I didn't do the whole borough, but 20% came to Crewe, and 40% went to Macclesfield. That leaves obviously another 40% to go to the rest of the borough.
Okay.
But I think
2 different sets of stats.
But I think the borough got 11 million over 3 years
Yes.
or something like that, which isn't bad.
Isn't to be turned down.
No?
No. So basically, yeah, So we just have to approve that we now spend the money that we've, when Cheshire East passes it over.
Hopefully this, if I'm going to be a bit glib, I'm not trying to be, hopefully this is more of a technicality. You've approved the principle of the application and accepting the money for the purpose of financial regulations, because of the scale of money, it must come for member scrutiny under the financial regulations, and so it comes to this committee to say, well, you've got the money, so yes, of course you can spend it, hopefully. If we can't, well, that's all a waste of time. And it's because of the level of the funds, at 135,000, it's actually council who must finally approve it, so you're recommending to council.
Right, okay.
So is anybody willing, Councillor Hogben?
Yeah, and I think it is notable, isn't it, that the need to defray payment prior to applying for the funding drawdown is noted.
Yes, it is.
You know, and you think that's up, so basically it's you claim a refund.
Yeah, it's quite standard in these sorts of funds to do that, but it does exclude smaller third sector groups. So, for
Yeah.
example, those charities who may want to apply may not have the financial reserves to fund it up front, which is a little bit challenging. We do, so that's not a massive problem to us. It's to note the fact that we'll have to pay it out to claim it back, but that's not going to cause any risk because we're in a strong
That's one
cash
of the risks
position.
that we can
Well,
take.
it gives me the greatest pleasure to propose that we spend it
Before we get the money back.
before we get the money.
I'll second that.
Right, so Councillor Strain Francis and Councillor Clark proposing the seconding. All those in favour? Just waiting for Kevin. Are you
Kevin,
voting, Kevin?
you can't.
No,
Oh, you can't, you're True Heritage.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So there's one abstention from Councillor Murray.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on to item 9, which is committee structure on page 39. Pete, do you want to lead us on this, and then we'll have the
Yep.
discussion?
I spoke at the last meeting. This corporate strategy that's been redefined by this new administration, and I thought, and I think members thought it was as well, an idea to revisit whether the current governance structure of the council matches its corporate strategy. That includes, obviously, at the highest level, the committee structure. To revisit that, I was tasked with talking to the chairs, which is the majority of this meeting, and also one or two other members to look at what that would mean, and it came up with taking out every aspect of the corporate strategy and then trying to allocate an appropriate point at which it should be overseen by committee. On page 42, that defines out, unfortunately it's black and white, sorry, but the top line is proposed committees. They reflect effectively what is already in existence, with the suggestion that planning becomes planning and environment, marketing events becomes events and culture, operations and improvements be rephrased, and currently that sits at Public Services Committee, but that's everything's open to conversation and discussion. This is not fixed because the actual recommendations coming out of this are to say further engagement with members and officers if this is the direction you want to go. A community committee, and this remains a finance and governance committee, but with some slight change around underneath the headings, but effectively a fair share of work and tasks under each committee is the intent, and to reflect the corporate strategy.
Anybody got any comments? Questions? Councillor Hogben?
It's just about the timescale, really. When is it envisaged that this might be introduced?
Right. Well, I'm not too fixed on that. It's more down to where we get to. If this is the direction of travel we're going to go down, which is absolutely fine, then I would suggest there'll be an engagement with members to sense check it and scrutinise it and give any other viewpoints on it. That would be great. It's also important that we talk to the officers who administer these committees and deliver these pieces of work to make sure it makes sense operationally, and any impacts that would have on delivery and how they work. And then if we get to a point where something like this or this seems like a workable proposal, then it would come to this committee again to just check that I've gone through a due process, and then for it to be recommended to council to be put in place. And also that would come with a revised set of terms of reference. That could be achieved within this civic year, and I think that's a reasonable schedule to work to if it's a process you want to get to the end of.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that, that probably the obvious time to adopt a new committee structure would probably be the annual meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's exactly what I'm going, yeah.
Makes sense.
Councillor Strone, Francis, do you want to say something? No? All right, okay. I just thought I saw your hand
Right,
raised.
Chair.
Take the whip.
Put it in the minutes.
Has anybody got any comments on the proposed structure? It does seem right to reflect on the structure and to put something in place as a new council with new corporate plan. Yeah.
Every box on page 42 represents an aspect, and every aspect is represented within the corporate strategy.
I think the version that we got is very much reflects the conversation that we had at that special meeting, just to look at it, so, you know.
Yeah.
So we need to recommend that this is taken forward and discussed with staff and with members. So that's what we have to vote on. So is anybody willing to propose that we take this forward to be discussed? Councillor Hogburn's hand was first, Councillor Clark second. So Councillor Hogburn proposing, Councillor Clark seconding. All those in favour? I think that's pretty unanimous, thank you. And then we're on to item 10, which is the budget setting proposal for 24-25.
Well, the budget setting process is a long one when you do it here on purpose, with the aim being that members get plenty of opportunity to see it as it develops and inform it as it develops. It goes to each committee twice. Prior to that, it's shared with all members to inform it. The officers obviously put some input into it. Through the committee process, they hopefully check and challenge it and move it around to suit their aims associated with those committees. And we are now on version 9 as it was circulated to you, and that shows all the committees' inputs to it, as well as considerations associated with the costs of running a council. It's a balanced budget. It's not a deficit budget. We're in a very strong financial position, which is positive. Allows members to feel confident when pushing forward the corporate strategy that you've taken on, and I believe it demonstrates an element of responsibility that it seeks to keep any associated increase in precept at a minimum. Within the medium-term financial plan, there was a tolerance up to 6%, 6.6%, I think it was, associated with any annual increase for this year, and this draft budget version 9 demonstrates a potential increase on precept of just under 5%.
Has anybody got any comments or questions? Councillor Clark?
What percentage has been included for salaries and wages?
6%.
6%. Are we above the new proposed minimum wage?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, living wage.
Yeah, so it's all under.
I think the likely pay rise is going to be 7%, isn't it?
I've not heard anything else. We've had I'll give you a personal opinion. This is not an opinion of Crewe Town Council or the corporate body. We've had 2 years of significant pay inflation, which is challenging, and I perceive it would be entirely understandable if that pay inflation was reduced in coming years, because it has been significant, up to 8% and a bit at one stage, which is hard to manage and hard to sustain. I've put in a figure of 6%. If members are minded that needs, if you know something I don't know, that's absolutely fine, then I can amend that figure. It will obviously impact on the bottom line figure, which will impact on a percentage increase in a precept. But equally, if it's expected to be that way, there's no point not to budget for it.
Councillor Hogburn?
Yeah, is it actually reasonably well known what the local government pay settlement might turn out to be.
I've heard nothing, so I don't know.
I think there's been, the position is that offers have been made, but currently
It's
none
more
have
of a
been accepted.
baseline figure, isn't it, that they're asking for a, you know, rather than a percentage, it's a,
Like last time it was 1,900 and
Yes.
some pounds, wasn't it?
1925 has been the last 2 years, which in year one was 8.6%, and this year is just over 6%. I perceive personally, it's not based on any other knowledge, that that's quite high and that it might not be as high in future. There is no base to that other than an opinion. I find it hard to sustain that sort of level of increase and inflation. Whilst I recognise there are inflation pressures on everyone as they go to work, equally it does have an impact on available services. So I don't know, if you've heard discussions at your various other meetings, then you know more than me. I've heard nothing about next year's potential pay offer. The last 2 years were 1925 flat rates. For
I'd have to look back, but it's something I got from Unison.
I'd like,
So, yeah, so it's, yeah, as a member of Unison.
I
I've
suppose
got-
6% is a reasonable amount to
Yeah.
raise.
Yeah.
And if it is a little bit more, well, we'll just have to find it from the budget, won't we?
we are in a strong financial position. I don't see a significant risk to our financial position if we are 1 or 2% wrong on that. And it does protect against some inflation in our precepts, which I think members might be minded to consider.
I note that the play area improvement scheme stays at 100,000, and there's been no sort of inflationary built into that. So it means we're delivering less.
Well, potentially you're exactly right, yeah. I would like to see that project taken to a different means of procurement, which I
Yeah.
hope will make savings.
Right.
And I hope we'll be able to do that. The problem we have with that is the way that's delivered is it's a grant of equipment to Cheshire is through ANSA, as their wholly owned company. And because of that, ANSA like to install themselves and go through their own procurement mechanism. And I would prefer, if I can negotiate it, to go through our procurement mechanism, which is a more open
Takes
market.
away the third.
Yeah, it misses a link, which is good.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
I can't guarantee that that's going to be deliverable. The O&I committee have recommended that budget, that's up to them. If this committee is minded that it requires some inflation consideration, that's what F&G is here for, scrutiny and checking it and deciding.
I think that within the O&I budget, we can probably find a little bit of inflation, if necessary,
Yeah.
by variance within the budget over the year. But I mean, I know that the council are doing 9 pocket parks and we've done 3.
Yeah.
So how many parks have we got left to do?
Well, I think that's a fair point, and I do think it will need revisiting. I will take the full blame for that £100,000. That's the budget that I proposed to members early on when I arrived here, to try and invest in the future of our provision for play equipment in the town over a generation, effectively, and try and wind it all the way around town to make sure that there's provision out all around the town. That said, I didn't know at that point we'd have a town investment plan which came forward with pocket parks, and a number are going to be done up. So members might be minded further on down this process to say that £100,000, is it all required for this now, or do we need to think of it in a different way? So it might be the council will be able to top it up if required. That's one
But we
thing.
could also buy it to other projects.
Or if you feel it's not the best way to spend it in the coming year,
We
you
can
can
look at
identify
other
new ones.
priorities that the town council might.
You have all those powers. So it's my fault it exists. I think it's there for, it's there for positive
It's been
purposes.
really well welcomed in all the areas that it's been done up. It was just my concern that, you know, because inflation is running at 10%,
Yeah,
that actually we're only delivering 90,000
exactly right.
in those parks compared to others where we have delivered 100,000. So
And you're exactly right to spot the inflation, but equally exactly right
other areas have got the
to point out that is there still the open opportunity to do it?
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
And that's to be reviewed as we go.
so we could build into something to having a review of all the pocket parks and where we're up to with the
Yeah, because I don't think
We'll have many left.
I don't think we will, but then you've got this thing about, we've got all this investment all in the space of 3 years, but unless you maintain them and you add equipment when equipment is broken, then parts deteriorate, which is the condition they were in
Yeah. So
3 years ago. So I think,
so it's what we move to the maintenance scheme rather than to a.
well, I mean, that's for the committee to decide, isn't it?
Okay.
If there's no pocket part that requires updating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean,
Councillor Hogman?
to all intents and purposes, this is like a, well, it's revenue budget, but it's been used for capital purposes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, actually, if you were talking about inflation, it's probably well above 10%. I mean, construction costs are rocketing, everybody knows that. But I wouldn't blame the clerk for this initiative. It was a great initiative. I mean,
Yeah.
investing in the future to the benefit of children and young people. Yes, it's interesting comment about the maintenance. I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion for a future time, isn't it? A very interesting discussion, which the whole council will need to think about rather carefully.
Well, I think it will go to operations improvements or whatever the council, the committees call at that point, to make a recommendation to council. Really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Councillor Murray.
Talking of maintenance, whose responsibility is it going to be to look after the pocket parks? Is it the town or will it be the borough?
Cheshire East Council.
So the way they're going, it's going to look like that there'll be no money for maintenance for these pocket parks in the future.
There already is very little, if any.
Yeah.
There is
That's
very
right.
little money
Yeah.
for maintenance of parks. It's very much down to just about safety checks and a little bit of repair when it's absolutely
And
desperate.
unfortunately, if the safety check improves a piece of equipment, they don't repair it, they just seal it off or they remove it.
I mean, that's fine, isn't it? Because I mean,
No.
the parks that have been finished this year, I think it's 2, I think, isn't it? If I'm correct.
Just
Then
yeah.
next year there'll be no need for maintenance because they'll be fine. The year after they will be.
Well-
As each year goes down, these things wear out.
But you're always going to get some kind of accidental damage somewhere on a park, no matter how sturdy it is. So yeah, technically they shouldn't need any repair, but you can't guarantee that, I think.
You can see, I mean, you mentioned about equipment being sealed off, but you can see that that already happened at Queen's Park. I mean,
Yeah.
it's only, well, Tom Dunlop was the mayor, so when was that?
3 years.
So, a couple of, literally last year, last summer, the play area at Queen's Park was, the work had been completed, it was, and it was opened up on a fairly damp day later in the year. So about a year ago, but you can already see, for example, the zip wire going to use, and there's a couple of things like that. So you can see that accidental damage or whatever is an issue, because there's already a couple of spaces in that recently, and that was done through different funding, and that's at the park, which is the jewel in the crown. So because it does put a very big question, rather, doesn't it, about maintenance and so forth. But you said, Chair, that this will be a matter for the Operations and Improvements or Public Services Committee, whatever, to consider at some future points. That's
Because they would then make a recommendation to council, wouldn't they?
Right, thank you.
So it's not for us to decide what another committee is
No,
going to do.
no.
But so we are looking at a 4.99% increase in the precept, which for a band D is £4.39 a year. And I think somewhere in the papers it says what a band A would be, which is the majority of
£2.93.
£2.93 a year increase in precept for a band A property. Councillor Rhodes?
Could I just talk me through how we've got to this stage? It's been through several times through all the committees who have scrutinised and put their steer on what they would like that budget to be spent on.
Yeah, we've had the business
And we
plan.
have that
yeah.
presented to us here.
Yeah.
There are some assumptions within that for 6% for wage increases, potentially, which is not reasonable to do, and that's what we did. And there's also an assumption on how much we would get from via Cheshire East from the government to help us.
We don't get any grants.
No.
So we get nothing. So
No.
the only assumption then is based on inflation,
Interest.
interest.
We do have a reserve that we draw down interest from CCLA, so that's in there as income. There are known grant sources we can get, so UK SPF is in there as an income
Right.
source, and money to support the work we're doing with the Heritage Centre is in there as well.
No.
But there's no grant income from the
So there's
central
no
pot.
extra that could vary.
Exactly right, yeah.
Right.
So we set a precept, and what that is our 100% setting. There's no other source for that money.
Okay. And all of that has been brought in by the councillors through the various committees,
Yes,
including the corporate plan, I may say.
yes.
And that's the direction we take in the next years.
In these 4 years, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any comments on the budget?
So I take it we're approving this for recommendation to go to full council.
Yeah, only council can approve the budget, but it's F&G's job to, as you have done quite rightly, to check it, challenge it, and see if you're willing to then put it forward. Has it gone through a process? If it has, you might agree, and is what you're proposing a sustainable approach?
And as committee chair, we've sat down with our officers, gone through them and looked at and put in requests for any additional items, etc. So,
I mean, I'd be, if you're looking for someone to propose the recommendation, I'm happy to propose that. I'll only comment this much, that I really, I've no doubt there'll be a lot of hang-ups. Some people have a lot of hang-ups about the percentage. And, so this in one way sort of meets that. So, it's roughly, that's about the inflation rate. 4.99 is about the inflation rate.
Headline annualised inflation currently is 6.3.
Yeah, so that's below inflation. People can agonise about that and can make an awful lot of play of the percentage, and the reality is, well, actually, what has determined this is what we seek to provide for the people of the borough. That's what the sort of the
for an
town.
extra £3 a year.
£3 or £4 a year.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's going to be seen that way, not just about increasing it for the sake of it. I mean, it could be different in some future point, if there was some big change one way and another. I'm happy to propose.
But if you look at the sort of increase in the number of projects that are going to be delivered next year, from relatively small increase in the budget, the arts heritage, the UK stuff, the Heritage Centre, the things that were adding value to the town for,
Well, the UK, the UK fund. I mean, that's a really good example. I mean, I noticed in that report, the interesting use of the word leverage. For £2,000, that's the leverage that we offered and secured 90,000. That's a pretty good rate of return, I would say.
As this is below the rate of inflation as we know it at the moment, I'll second it.
Thank you. So we've got Councillor Ogden proposing, Councillor Strain from staying from.
yeah,
Not getting
Dennis.
words. Dennis. Get me words out. All
Borrow my
those in
teeth if you
favour.
like.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Okay.
That looks unanimous. Thank you. I think particularly with wage inflation, you have to, and also inflation in general, that we have to have a small rise. So we're on to item 11, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 16th of January 2024.